let's talk about the curious case of the Liverpool bomber, because some very strange details about this have come out, and it's becoming a very difficult thing for the mainstream to try and pass because it doesn't follow the usual events of an Islamic terror attack, and even though it does end up with a similar result. So you may remember, of course, that on Remembrance Sunday, there was a chap who was a refugee asylum seeker from the Middle East who attempted to bomb an Anglican church, wasn't able to, and so attempted to bomb a hospital instead. Didn't manage that either, and didn't even kill the taxi driver who took him to the hospital, ended up blowing himself up. So it seems a bit, in retrospect, like a Four Lions skit.
Yep.
But it's quite serious because it's not like it's the first, and it certainly won't be the last terror attack. It's just fortunate that this one only killed the terrorist. The 4 other people were arrested, but they were interrogated and released, because apparently they had nothing to do with it. And so the taxi driver survived, all good. For some reason, the co-chair of the Conservative Party came out and gave his deepest sympathies to the terrorist. Not sure why. Deepest sympathy for the person that's lost their life. It's very progressive of you, Oliver. That was a mistake, so he retracted that. The Daily Mirror, a very left-wing paper, decided to post rest in peace to the bomber. What I love about this is that they had to go and edit it as well and take that down. But just it's always going to be there because the edit history is there. But what I love about this, and this really is a symptom of the problem of the internet. Something's happened. I'm not fully informed on it, but I'm going to make a public statement about it anyway. And so now you have Conservatives and Labour both praising and giving sympathies for the bomber. Insincerely, obviously. I don't think these people intentionally were like, oh, an Islamic terrorist. Quick, let's praise that guy. They're just stupid, and they're just involved too much in internet politics. Jeremy Corbyn, on the other hand. Now, I'm 50% sure that this is a shop. The only thing that makes me suspicious about it is that I don't think Corbyn would have tried to put the wreath on a burning car, because, of course, if he's going to give a wreath to a terrorist, he wants the wreath to remain intact. You know? It would be out of kindness and consideration, a gentler kind of politics. But this picture, as amusing as for me to tweet out, was apparently less amusing when a Conservative councillor tweeted it out. And he got told off for this. But the thing is, Jeremy Corbyn is actually a well-known terrorist sympathiser, so him using the opportunity of a terrorist attack to mock Corbyn, well, who's surprised? If you scroll down on this one, you can see this, 100 times that Corbyn has sided with terrorists. He has laid wreaths at the graves of terrorists before.
100 times?
Yeah, I mean, after...
Isn't that a kind of cricket score or something when you pass 100?
I mean, it's like football caps or something, isn't it? But there are many times, like when the IRA tried to blow up Margaret Thatcher, he invited them to Parliament and things like this. He's got a long history of siding with the enemies of Britain, so I'm not surprised. But, you know, I was thinking, okay, great, a base Conservative councillor, this is good. But no, he backpedaled after this came out. We can go to the next one. He apologised for tweeting and said, oh, it wasn't me, I was hacked.
Ugh.
It's weak.
Yeah.
It's weak source. We know you weren't hacked. We know that the fact that Jeremy Corbyn is a terrorist sympathiser and you're making that point. Stand on it. It's fine. They'd do it to you if it was the other way around, just so you know.
Hashtag social justice, hashtag families. All views are mine. Interesting bio there.
Yeah.
That sounds like a very conservative bio, doesn't it? Hashtag social justice.
But at least he was going after Corbyn, I suppose.
That's true.
But anyway, so apparently the taxi driver is apparently doing very well, which is good to know. His wife posted something on Facebook saying that he's extremely sore but doing okay. He doesn't think of himself as a hero. He didn't actually lock the doors. The bomber was just incompetent, it seems. But he did get out. And frankly, I think he just did what we'd all do in the circumstance, try and get away from it, which is totally fair. Yeah. But good for him. And, I'm glad that he's doing okay.
Yeah.
So, who was the bomber? Well, he was a chap who was either a Syrian or Iraqi immigrant, but he also had a Jordanian passport. So it's hard to tell who this chap is. But his name was Imad Jamil al-Swilman. Typically British. And he was believed to have spent a large part of his life in Iraq.
So that's not the Yorkshire Swilmans, is it?
Not the Yorkshire Swilmans, no. I believe these are from Devon, actually. Right, okay. No. So he's a Muslim immigrant. He was arrested for possession of a large knife after the rejection of his asylum claim in 2014, and this resulted in him being sectioned under the Mental Health Act and hospitalised for several months. He was apparently a motor racing fan, a massive motor racing fan. And so he changed his name to Enzo Alamini. Do you know who that's after?
Is it not Enzo Ferrari? Or
That's correct. He changed his name by default in honor of Italian supercar creator Enzo Ferrari in a bid to sound more Western. What, Italians? Does he not know about Brexit? Jokes aside, I suppose it does sound Western to someone from Iraq, but it doesn't sound very British for someone from Britain. Anyway, police said that he's been living at a hostel for asylum seekers run by private contracting giant Serco in Sutler Street in Liverpool for some time before renting the bomb factory 2 miles away and creating the bomb. And so the question is, okay, why do you do this? What was all of this about? Well, UK Security Minister Damon Hines was like, well, he may have been radicalised during the pandemic. That's a good point. He may have been.
So this was the fault of lockdowns? That's
the implication, yes.
Interesting.
The coronavirus...
Interesting admission there.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I agree. The lockdowns were terrible. The security services apparently disrupted more than 30 late-stage plots in the last few years. He said there's a shift towards attacks becoming more self-directed. He says, we use the term lone wolf a lot. Sometimes it's a bit misleading because it gives a certain picture of an individual. But certainly it's true we've seen a move over time, a shift from what we call directed attacks as part of a bigger organization to people who are basically self-radicalizing in small groups or rarely totally alone. And obviously this means you're locked at home all day, you're not allowed to go anywhere during the lockdowns, you end up reading radical material online like The Guardian, and suddenly you're there bombing an Anglican church. Don't get me wrong, who of us can say that we haven't had that thought?
I think I can say I haven't had that thought with confidence.
Well, same here, actually.
Good.
But anyway, so the fly in the ointment, the spanner in the works to all of this was, but you're calling him an Islamic terrorist, but he was a Christian convert. Oh, well. So we've got our first Christian suicide bomber, do we? Very convincing. I'm convinced. It emerged that Al Sweelman had converted from Islam to Christianity at Liverpool's Anglican Cathedral in 2017, the cathedral that he tried to bomb. Are there any other records of Christians bombing cathedrals?
I don't think it's part of the scripture, no.
No, not generally what Jesus was saying. But it's interesting how he was trying to bomb the cathedral in which he had apparently converted, but of course he was thwarted by the bad traffic in Liverpool. But he was sectioned 7 years ago after trying to take his own life by jumping off an overpass while waving the knife as well. So he does seem to have been someone with mental health problems.
Definitely.
But this is interesting, isn't it? Because in 2016, it became apparent that asylum seekers were getting baptized specifically to stay in Britain. Now, I find this kind of adorable. This sort of like, well, Britain's a Christian country, isn't it? Well, if we convert to Christianity, they'll give us preferential treatment. Wrong. How totally wrong you are. Britain does everything but give Christians preferential treatment. But anyway, back in 2016, the Times reported that hundreds of Muslim asylum seekers have had their claims accepted by the Home Office after converting to Christianity. The converts, who are mainly from Iran, argue that their new faith would expose them to persecution, which doesn't make Islam sound very tolerant, if they return to their home country. Senior Church of England clerics admitted last week that some asylum seekers might be getting baptized, in part to exploit a loophole in the system.
And to be honest, at this point, the system appears to be nothing but loopholes.
I'm amazed that they can't just move here like everyone else. I mean, why claim to be an asylum seeker when we allow 700,000 people to live here every year? They're not asylum seekers. Don't know why you get the special treatment. But anyway, the Reverend Pete Wilcox, Dean of Liverpool, whose cathedral has baptised about 200 asylum seekers in the past 4 years, said that there was no rush to convert to Christianity from Islam by Muslims who already had British citizenship. I'm getting a bit cynical. It's just weird how it's only the asylum seekers who are converting and not those Muslims who come here legally and have British citizenship already. I can't think of a single example, he said. In fact, there was advice from ISIS to Muslims, to Muslim radicals, to pose as Christians while plotting your attacks and getting access to our civilizations. They released a document titled Safety and Security Guidelines, which I find hilarious, for the Lone Wolf Mujahideen. But notice how Safety and Security Guidelines, which is left-wing corporate speak, for the Lone Wolf Mujahideen. It's fascinating. That title is incredible.
So health and safety for suicide bombers.
Yes. Yes.
It's clown world, absolute clown
It's
world.
amazing, isn't it? It's like, anyway, these documents could explain how militants could avoid having a plot thwarted by Western security officials and suggested potential targets. They say, quote, if you can avoid having a beard, wearing kwamis, which are Islamic tunics, using miswak, which are teeth cleaning twigs, and having a booklet of prayers and devotional acts with you, it's better. It is permissible for you to wear a necklace showing the Christian cross. And of course, there were concerns at the time about Muslims pretending to convert. And the a man called Malcolm Hitchcock, had taken in Mr. Swalman, or whatever his name was, in 2017. If we can go to the next one, John, because he was doing his Christian duty. Well, these refugees have arrived here, they've converted to Christianity, and I, of course, as a good Christian man, I'm going to take them into my house. And so this chap had previously been aware of the fact that asylum seekers are falsely converting to Christianity for their visa applications. In a document relating to an appeal in Manchester in 2015, when he was a lay minister at Liverpool Cathedral, he said he was forthright in explaining how he understands that some Iranians might pretend to have found Jesus in order to support the claim for asylum. This is something like he and the other clergy and staff at the cathedral are very aware of. This is being described by the Times as trying to game the system. In fact, it was Priti Patel, I think. We can get the next one, who said this. The Liverpool bomber was a failed asylum seeker who tried to game the system, according to the Home Office, which means Priti Patel, because the rest of the Home Office hates her.
Well, she did. But sorry, he did, because he was still here. But yes.
Yes. Well, that's what we'll talk about in a second, in fact. Priti Patel, again, she talks a good game, but it seems, as we were discussing the other day, all of the institutions have made an informal agreement not to pay attention to anything she says and not do what they're told to do. And so she's in charge of the Home Office purely nominally. In name only does she get to direct what they do. Otherwise, they seem to be following their own internal logic that was set by Tony Blair. Thanks very much. Anyway, she said that this is he exploited the merry-go-round of Britain's broken asylum system by making repeated claims to stay in the country. Applicants who show they are committed Christians can argue their new faith would put them at risk. And the bombing was declared a terrorist incident, but detectives are not finding any evidence of an ideological motive, and he was not being monitored by MI5. But the question is, why was he still here? After 7 years of being a failed asylum seeker, why isn't he removed after his first failed application? It's like, sorry, you aren't going to get asylum here. Deport, right? So he was appealed every time the Home Office turned down his application. But again, these appeals were rejected because authorities believed he was lying about being Syrian, because he doesn't seem to come from Syria. He had a Jordanian passport, apparently grown up in Iraq, and claims he only converted from Christianity to Islam to improve his case. So at least they are aware of this. Latest government figures show that there are currently 125,000 outstanding asylum cases being considered by the British authorities. 125,000. Staggering. Of these, 5,900 people, including, they use his name, Al-Mini, the new name, were awaiting the outcome of an appeal, and approximately 39,500 people are waiting to be deported. Nearly 40,000 people are just sat around waiting to be deported. What's the delay? Like, go put them on an airplane. Send them to wherever they need to go. Get it over with. In 2013, the number of failed asylum seekers and criminals being deported peaked at 47,000, but this last year has dropped to now only 8,000, these failed asylum seekers who are being deported. So for some reason, the Home Office and the various institutions connected to it are just simply not deporting these people and just letting them live at large in a country where they're not paying taxes, they're not, under any sort of understanding of who they are, what they're doing here. We don't know what their criminal records are. They're not supposed to be here. They're here illegally. They should leave, and we should make them leave.
And am I correct in thinking that the majority of these 125,000 outstanding asylum cases are young Muslim men?
Well, I don't know the age of them, but they are going to, and unfortunately the Daily Mail doesn't give us this information in this report.
It may not be present in public statistics, but
it is going to be that case, yes. I would put money on the fact that the overwhelming majority of them are Muslim men, say 18 to 40, something like that.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
If we're to compare it to the demographic statistics coming in from migrants in Europe, which seems like a fair thing to do, then that would be the case.
Yeah, the illegal immigrants who are invading Britain by crossing the Channel illegally, yes, then that would exactly be the correct profile of those people.
Now, do you happen to know what the rough size of the British Army is these days?
It's about 80,000 people.
80,000. So 1.5 times the British Army's worth of outstanding asylum cases.
And more coming.
Yes.
Even more, 1,000 a day crossing the channel. So in a couple of months, it'll be twice the size.
Jolly good.
Good news. Nothing to worry about, folks. And what I love about this, just to finish this off, is the left-wing reporting on this. The Independent. I guess we'll just never know why he did it. I guess we won't. I guess we won't know why the Muslim man who claims to have converted to Christianity decided to kill himself in a suicide bomb attack. Who could know?
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast Lotus Eaters, you can catch us live 1 p.m. UK time on our website. And if you'd like more from us, you can also subscribe to find some of our premium content.
Yeah, we actually have absolutely loads on there now because we're over a year old at this point. So we've got a massive library of content that you can't find anywhere else, such as our regular series, which are Contemplations and Epochs. Contemplations, we have philosophical and scientific discussions, and in Epochs, we have long, in-depth conversations about things that happen in history. This is one we did recently about the Nika riots, the absolutely brutal Nika riots in Constantinople. I really enjoyed doing myself, but we also have we also have loads of expert articles from people who know what they're talking about, such as this one talking about the misnomer of postmodern neo-Marxism. You may well remember Jordan Peterson getting castigated by left-wing activists for using the phrase. Well, it is a bit of a misnomer, but Thomas happens to be an expert in this subject, and so he takes you through it. And as you can see, there is a silver and gold tier member audio track that goes along with it. So if you don't want to have to read it, you can just listen to it instead. But we also have a bunch of premium podcasts that we can't really host on YouTube because of editorial guidelines, shall we say, such as Harry doing this excellent one, What Happened to the January 6th Rioters, and another one, in fact, that Harry and myself did about a whistleblower from a German public broadcaster talking about the COVID coverage and the particularly engineered narrative in which they can't talk about certain things. And so this leaves a bunch of questions up in the air, and we explore that. Again, editorial guidelines mean we can't really host that elsewhere. We also have a bunch of really excellent interviews. I did one recently with a chap called Philip Tanzer. He's if you're a men's rights activist, you may have heard of him because he comes out of that space, but he's also an ex-gay porn star who's turned conservative activist who has some very interesting opinions.
Very interesting trajectory to take.
Yeah, it's the sort of person you're probably not going to meet in your regular life, but he's a fascinating guy. He's a really nice chap. And also, follow us on alternative media because, of course, we want to break the stranglehold of Silicon Valley over everything that we do. And this means that follow us on platforms like Getter, where you can follow lotus_com to get all the latest updates from us. And also, we are speaking, or I am speaking, at a conference hosted by Getter at the London O2, the Indigo section of the London O2 on December the 8th. I'll be speaking there it's part of the Counterculture conference, where we're talking about why what is happening to the West is happening and what we can do about it. So part of that is following us on Getter and coming and see us, and of course, subscribe because that keeps everything running.